My parents threw my bags onto the wet hallway while my brother grinned from the front porch. "Get out, you bastard," my dad yelled, his face contorted with disgust. "You're an ignorant piece of trash, a disgrace to this family." My mom didn't even look up from her phone. They were kicking me out of the only home I'd ever known because I'd chosen to start a tech company instead of going to law school like my spoiled brother. They thought I was completely broke, that I was going to fail. What they didn't know was that exactly 2 hours earlier, my company had been acquired. I'd just legally transferred $31 million into my own bank account. So I looked my dad straight in the eye and said, "Fine, whatever." I didn't argue. My name is Nova. I'm 27 years old, and until 3 weeks ago, I was officially considered my parents' biggest mistake. I grew up in a home where a person's worth was measured by their college degree and career. My father is a senior partner at a prestigious law firm, and my mother is a corporate consultant who takes pride in her high social standing. Then there's my older brother, Brent. Brent was the undisputed favorite, the perfect son who excelled in law school, passed the bar exam on his first try, and seamlessly joined my father's firm. And then there's me. I was the stubborn oddball. When I turned 22, I made a conscious decision to steer clear of the traditional college path. I couldn't stand the rigid, outdated lectures while the digital world was evolving right before our eyes. I retreated to my room, taught myself advanced software engineering, and began building digital assets and automated logistics platforms from scratch. This wasn't ambition in my parents' eyes, it was a complete failure. For years, my daily routine was accompanied by my father's perpetual frown and Brent's mocking smiles at the dinner table. They treated me like an intruder in their refined world, constantly reminding me that an ignorant, lowly person had no future in our family. The cold rain was lashing against the office windows when the final blow came. Hearing my father growl, "Get out, you bastard," didn't break me as he'd expected. Brent stood right behind him, arms crossed, a smug, triumphant smile on his face that seemed to say, "I've won at last." My mother stood there, completely unconcerned, adjusting her diamond bracelet as if my entire existence was nothing more than a minor inconvenience on her schedule. They expected me to scream, or cry, or beg them for another chance to prove myself. Instead, a strange, profound calm enveloped me. I turned without a word, went up to my room, and began throwing my clothes into a rumpled suitcase. As my hands moved, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out with trembling fingers, not from fear, but from a surge of adrenaline. It was an official notification from my company escrow account. The global tech giant that had acquired my automated logistics software had finalized the bank transfer. The digital signature was complete, and all the legal acquisition documents were signed. I logged into my personal bank account, and there I saw the balance, staring back at me with cold, unchanging numbers. $31 million. My parents really believed they were getting rid of a useless, incompetent person on the street. I closed my bag, looked at the screen one last time, and decided to let them continue believing that lie. The next morning, I woke before sunrise. The house was steeped in silence, enveloped by the heavy, suffocating arrogance that had always made it feel more like a museum than a home. I didn't bother leaving a heartfelt note on the kitchen table, nor did I rush to wake anyone for one last tearful confrontation. They didn't deserve my anger and certainly not my tears. I simply grabbed my only suitcase, walked out the front door, and quietly closed it behind me, severing ties to the past with a single, silent click. Instead of searching for the cramped, dreary studio apartment my family had assumed, I called a private cab to take me straight to downtown Seattle. I booked a stunning luxury suite upstairs with glass walls, overlooking the shimmering waters of Puget Sound. When the receptionist looked at me with a hint of hesitation, wondering if a 27-year-old in a simple sweatshirt could afford it, I smiled and paid a year's rent up front with my new black card. Within 48 hours, I had hired one of the top wealth management and asset protection firms in the Pacific Northwest to manage my newfound wealth. My first official instruction to them was simple: block my digital presence. I permanently blocked my father's phone, my mother's social media accounts, and Brent's email. I erased myself completely from their system. For the next 3 weeks, I sat by my floor-to-ceiling windows, sipping my hot coffee, watching the ferries sail by, and calmly building the foundation for my next big tech venture, while my family thought I was drowning. My quiet isolation lasted only 3 weeks before the perfect facade of my family, reflecting the wealth of high society, began to crack. Because I had blocked their phone numbers and email addresses entirely, they had no direct way to contact me. Instead, an urgent email notification popped up in my inbox from a name I recognized instantly: Harold Sterling, my family's longtime estate lawyer. He had managed my father's business assets for over a decade. I opened the email expecting a cold, formal request to return the keys to my old house, or to waive some minor family claims. Instead, the letter's legalistic tone masked deep panic. As I read the attached documents, a wry smile spread across my face. It turned out that while my parents were busy throwing me out onto the street for being an ignorant scumbag, their spoiled son, a brilliant law school graduate, was busy destroying their entire financial legacy. Brent had persuaded my father to invest heavily in the family's main house and the capital of the law firm in a massive, high-risk commercial real estate project. Brent personally handled the contract protocols, ignoring crucial and high-stakes clauses that put them in grave danger. The entire project collapsed into a spiral of fraud, leaving my father's company facing massive lawsuits from financial institutions and staggering debt. They were on the verge of complete bankruptcy, and the bank was already preparing to foreclose on the very house I'd been evicted from just weeks earlier. They desperately needed an immediate cash injection of millions of dollars to salvage their reputation and spare my father serious legal trouble. But because of Brent's disastrous mismanagement, no legitimate financial institution would take them on. Harold Sterling must have given my parents my private, unlisted email address, because less than 12 hours later, a message from my father appeared. The crude arrogance that had characterized his emails was completely gone, replaced by a desperate and obsequious tone. He claimed that he and my mother had realized their mistake and begged me to meet them for dinner at the Obsidian, a very exclusive and luxurious restaurant downtown. They mistakenly assumed I had a low-paying retail job, or perhaps I was relying on a meager security deposit from my late grandmother. A paltry sum they could easily manipulate to buy themselves a few extra days before foreclosing my house. I replied with a single sentence, agreeing to the meeting. But I wasn't going alone, and I certainly wasn't going as the vulnerable girl they'd kicked out. I contacted my private wealth management firm and arranged for my lead asset protection lawyer, a sharp and powerful man named Damian Vance, to accompany me, along with 2 financial analysts from my firm's legal team. As night fell, I deliberately wore a tailored, elegant dress, perfectly suited to my high financial standing. I entered the dimly lit marble dining room of the Obsidian Hotel, my legal team walking a few steps behind me. As we approached the reservation table, I saw my parents and Brent sitting there, looking utterly exhausted. Their expensive suits couldn't conceal the sheer terror of impending bankruptcy. They looked at me, expecting a broken daughter seeking forgiveness. But the moment they saw my cool smile and that of my legal team, their mouths fell open. My father, trying to maintain his composure, cleared his throat and forced a smug smile. "Nova," he said, his voice trembling slightly despite his earnest efforts. "We're glad you chose to act rationally and come forward. I hope the last 3 weeks you've spent on the streets have taught you a valuable lesson about how difficult real life can be without a family to support you." Brent nodded eagerly beside him, his eyes darting nervously between Damian Vance and the financial analysts. My father leaned forward, lowering his voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "We have a temporary cash flow problem in the business, the result of a minor oversight on Brent's part. We know your grandmother left you a small trust fund, and we expect you to hand over your savings to help the family. It's your duty." I didn't say a word. I didn't get angry, nor did I try to appease them with an argument. I simply gestured to Damien. He opened his leather briefcase, took out the official acquisition documents, and smoothly placed them on the polished mahogany table directly in front of my parents. "What is this junk?" Brent muttered, reaching for the papers. But it was their lawyer, Harold Sterling, who snatched them away first. As his eyes scanned the company seal and the final bank transfer confirmation, his face went completely white. He began coughing nervously, his hands shaking violently as he looked at my parents. "Richard Victoria," Harold whispered, his voice trembling with horror. "This isn't a small savings account. This is a full-fledged official takeover notice. Your daughter is the sole founder of Omni Logistics Systems, and she legally received a special cash payment of $31 million exactly 3 weeks ago." My mother gasped, clutching her chest, while my father stared at the document as if it were a ghost. Brent looked as if he were about to throw up. Suddenly, his tears flowed. My father reached across the table, his voice trembling as he begged for forgiveness, and pleaded with me to help him save their home. I stood up, straightened my elegant dress, and looked at them with utter indifference. "You called me ignorant scum and threw me out," I said calmly. "You wanted to protect your family fortune so you could keep it for yourselves." Damien handed them a final non-disclosure and waiver form, guaranteeing they couldn't legally claim a single cent of my fortune, and we left the restaurant for good.
अंधेरी दीवारों में खुद को ढूंढता हूँ मैं, ये जो दिन सहाने थे उन्हीं को सोचता हूँ मैं, तुम्हारे बिन ये मौसम भी बड़ा बेसर्द लगता है, दिल का हर एक कोना अब बहुत ही को ढूंढता हूँ मैं, ये जो दिन सुहाने थे उन्हीं को सोचता हूँ मैं। तुम्हारे बिन ये मौसम भी बड़ा सर्द लगता है, दिल का हर एक कोना अब बहुत ही दर्द भरता है। मेरे साए भी मुझसे अब जुदा होने को कहते हैं, तुझे खोने की राहों में ये आंसू बहने लगते हैं। कहाँ जाऊं कहाँ ढूंढूं मेरा वो साजो सामा, तो मेरी हर एक तमन्ना तू, मेरी रूह का मका तू। लकीरों में नहीं लिखा जो तुमने ख्वाब देखा था, वफा की इस कहानी में फकत एक गम ही लिखा था। सितारों से भी पूछता है पता तेरा कहाँ होगा, मगर खामोश है दुनिया, कहाँ मेरा जहाँ होगा। बस एक बार मुड़ के देख ले मेरी बेबसी की सूरत, मुझे है आज भी तेरी वफा की सख्त जरूरत। साए मेरे तन्हा सफर बस रह गया दर्द का असर, साए मेरे तन्हा सफर बस रह गया दर्द का असर, दर्द का असर।